And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson. The Oklahoma Drill Draft, an idea that was created in the big old bag of mail from a loyal listener. We did an all-time version, but now we are going to be spinning it forward here in draft season as we are going to be looking at the pool of players, which is the 2021 college football rosters. So since it is draft time, that's right, we've only got a few drafts left, gentlemen, but this one is really fun because we get to hit the trenches. The offensive line, we will be drafting 2 of them. The defensive line, we'll be drafting 2 of them. Linebacker, you will get 1, and we will be doing 1 running back. 6 rounds, 4 participants here. The first overall pick, we're going last name alphabetical order here. So E, F, K, P. Bud Elliott, you get the first pick.
Ooh. Tom, yeah, E before F. All right, well, do I need to take all my time or can I just go? Because I really think this one is a kid I've seen for 6 or 7 years now. We knew about him as a freshman down there in Lake Okeechobee. He then went to IMG. Now he's at Alabama. I still have the photo that somebody from the opening sent me where he weighed in at 374 before his senior year in high school and yet put up just absolutely bonkers testing numbers. Evan Neal.
Yeah.
Just an absolute freak for Alabama. Basically anybody he lines up with is just being escorted out of the building. And I'm going to start my team with Evan Neal, offensive tackle.
And he will be moving from right to left this year with Leatherwood gone.
I believe so.
Yeah. Top 10 player on my board overall, one of the top offensive linemen that I wanted. Like you said, just an absolute mass of a man. And in the Oklahoma drill, like, did y'all start to think about this within the context of the Oklahoma drill? Because I don't know if I could, like, I couldn't just Google best running backs and think that the best running backs were necessarily going to be the best running backs for the Oklahoma drill. And for the linebackers and defensive linemen, I've got I'm not going to tip my draft board, but I was thinking about run stoppers more than pass rushers necessarily. Were y'all taking that approach a little bit?
I'm not going to give away
I got athletes.
strategy.
Got athletes. Okay. All right, Tom. Well, give some of your strategy for round 1, pick number 2 with Evan Neal off the board.
Chip's out here like, so who are you going to pick?
Yeah.
My first pick. See, this is a tough one for me. I'm torn between 2 names that I would really like to take with this one. And I know that the other one is very unlikely to come back to me. I'm going to take DeMarvin Leal, Texas A&M. I'm going to bring some thump right from the start. I want somebody who could cause some havoc with my offensive lineman, maybe break through and knock that running back backwards before he even gets to the line of scrimmage. Just somebody that when the offensive lineman gets down and gets in his stance and picks his head up and sees who's across from him and says, "Ah, crap."
Very good pick.
So I was curious if there was a number 1 overall guy. I would have said DeMarvin Leal, but Bud's pick I think would be
pretty good.
Yeah. No, I know. I was curious because in all of our drafts, I think there's been players like we've asked the question, is there somebody who's resonated? And I think you guys got the top 1 or 2 picks that I know I had him as 1, 2. I don't know where Chip stood, and we'll see where he goes. But I do think like you're starting to separate yourselves there, and you guys got good picks. Me in the 3 spot in almost every draft. I'll just keep letting them drop to me. All right, so you guys, I'm going to take – said I wanted athletes. I'm going to go Kenyon Green from Texas A&M. I'm going to address the offensive side of the ball. So I said I wanted athletes, somebody who was a 5-star coming as a tackle, coming out of high school, moved down, has gotten better at Texas A&M and really come into his own. I think he's one of the best offensive linemen in the country. I think he's going to be a top 5, top 10 pick in the draft next year. So I'm going to take Kenyon Green from Texas A&M.
So the top 2 OLs and the top DL on my board have been gone with the first 3 picks, including 2 Aggies.
Fascinating because that was not my number 1 overall. And I do believe that I've got the number 1 overall sitting right here for me at 4. So before I break this into the next line, I mean, Bryan Bresee from Clemson University. I think that when we're talking about an interior defensive lineman who can cause havoc without even, coming off the edge, somebody who's going to be able to use strength and size, that was the one that I am running to turn in my index card. And I kind of think I'm just going to go ahead and cash this out here with the first pick of the second round in our structure. Again, 2 offensive linemen, 2 defensive linemen, 1 running back, 1 linebacker. And if I can still get really, really high-end talent, Bryan Bresee was my number 1 overall. DeMarvin Leal, yes, he was definitely up there on my top tier. But there's another name here, and there's no way that it's going to come back. So if I just want to have absolute game-changing disruption from my defensive lineman, I'm going to go with Ohio State's Haskell Garrett. And I am done with defensive linemen with Bryan Bresee, Haskell Garrett, and I'm feeling very good about that.
He was on my list.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure everybody's list. Yeah.
Yeah. Bresee was the other guy I was talking about when I said between the 2 guys. My concern so far for you, though, Chip, is that your drill could be too defensive line dominant at this point.
How?
Right.
The offensive line are going to get worked.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of the top. We've already lost 2 of the top offensive linemen. Who knows? There's 6 more picks before you go again. A few more of them could be gone. You could be looking at the number 8 offensive lineman by the time it comes back to you having to go up against Bresee and Garrett. I don't know. I feel bad for your running back right now.
All right, Danny, back to you.
All right, I'm going to go. There's a couple different guys on my board here. I got offensive line addressed. I do want to go defensive line. There's a couple that I'm leaning towards. I think if you go defensive line, you stick with the SEC. I'm going to go Jordan Davis out of Georgia as a defensive tackle, 6'6", 300 out of high school. He's added to that to get up to 340 pounds. That's going to set up a pretty nice anchor up there for the linebacker to come crashing up for that collision with the running back. So I'm going to take Jordan Davis out of Georgia.
On my board.
Yeah.
Okay. So, no, that's a good pick. What do I want to do?
There's one guy I really want. I just hope Tom does not take him.
That was the reason I had to mix it up too, because if we just keep running forward and backward, then we're all getting each other's picks, which could establish some good rivalries as we are looking ahead to lock season. But I at least want to get everybody a chance to undercut each other for these picks here in the last drafts of the offseason.
I'm going with an offensive lineman from the SEC, but I don't think he's like one of the big name offensive linemen that most fans would generally know. I think that if you pay attention to offensive line play, though, he is somebody who has stood out to you over the last year or two. He plays for the Kentucky Wildcats. His name is Darion Canard. He is the first offensive lineman I am taking in the Oklahoma draft.
That's a really good pick, Tom.
But it's not the one.
No, I had one offensive lineman left ahead of him, but he was literally right there with me. But I'm not going O-line. I'm going D-line. Is everybody else going to weigh in on Tom's pick? Because Kinnard's a hell of a pick, I think.
Oh, I mean, we got it out on the board. And couldn't he have gone pro? Because I think our last 2 picks. I know
he's like a super senior, I think.
Jordan Davis could have gone pro. He decided to come back. He is going to be obviously a huge part of any optimism for the Georgia Bulldogs. Stud. Darion Canard, stud, could have gone pro. These aren't just great players, but it's a lot of experience too. Just some old man meat.
Old man meat slapping.
I like that. All right. So I have Evan Neal. A lot of these nose guard types just started going off the board real fast. And there's one guy left who is just, he's kind of built like a fire hydrant. And I think he's just as tough to block and move out of the way. And Keondre Coburn, come on down to Team Bud. Just an absolute beast for Texas. Texas had a lot of problems last year. He was not one of them. When Tom wore the Bevo shirt, I was like, oh, if you guys are not watching us on Cover 3 YouTube, you won't see it, but he's got the Bevo shirt on today.
I wore a Bevo shirt to an Oklahoma drill draft, and then two of the first 3 picks were Aggies. So
I'm going to give some Texas love here. I think that's the way to go. Just he's really dominant and as a run stopper, very hard. I'd love to see my team practice against each other, like Evan Neal going up against Keondre Coburn, 6'6.5", trying to get under the pads of Coburn. That's going to be really fun. So that's my pick right there.
6'2", 348 pounds, straight out of Houston, Texas. Keondre Coburn wraps up the second round. Bud starts the third round. He's got Evan Neal from Alabama, Keondre Coburn from Texas. Where are you going to start your third round?
So I think I can wait on him.
That's what you think.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. There's a couple names where it's like I feel like I could wait, but I don't know for sure.
That's what I really liked about this stuff, because how do you value your offensive line, defensive line, running back, and linebacker? What's your priority here?
And it's not like you're just drafting like best player or biggest name. It's like you're trying to figure out what you want.
I'm going to say apologies in advance. Just as a moment of real honesty here at the beginning of the third round, there are University of Washington football players that didn't make my board because I was not able to pull their pronunciations. I know they are very, very, very good, but I just had some other options, and I didn't have. And there's a couple that I did look up, but I just want to go ahead and give that one out for any Husky fans. I'm going to admit my shortcomings here as we go through the Oklahoma drill draft.
All right, I'm going to save him. Give me Bijan Robinson.
Damn it!
I'm sticking with Texas. I just think he is like a rare back as far as power speed combo. You don't have a whole lot of room to juke people out in the Oklahoma drill. It's kind of, make a quick move, attack a half man, run through them. There's not a lot of times where guys are just completely whiffing, So I want a bigger back. I don't know what Bijan weighs right now, but like as a recruit, he was definitely pretty rocked up. And I think he's a welcome addition to the team.
He was who I was about to take if you didn't take him.
Okay.
All right. See, now I'm stuck in a position where like
it's all flustered.
I've got like a bunch of sleeper picks, and it's like, oh, I can't just call them all sleeper picks at this point. Oh man. No, that's a very good pick. I think that for this drill, he's big, he's fast, he's strong. He's kind of exactly what you want in a running back for this drill.
It's early for a running back, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's only 6. Well, I guess. Yeah.
All right. I guess I'll pop the linebacker cherry here. I'll take Christian Harris from Alabama.
Dang it.
Yeah.
He's who I wanted. Number one at the position. I wanted to have a number one at the position there too.
See, I had a sleeper. I was planning on waiting till like the very last round. I won't name him until the end. I was going to take him with my linebacker spot and fill everybody else out because I didn't think anybody else would take him. But
so good for you.
Value's too high.
Yeah, good for you for sacrificing whatever cool points you'd get on the sleeper pick to just be able to really shore it up with a surefire All-American and Christian Harris.
Yeah, I'll make the sacrifice.
All right, I'm trying to get as many tops at their position as I can. Feel like I did all right on my guard with Kenyon Green. I'm going to go with somebody I think. So I'm partial to this school for offensive linemen. I played with a guy in Tommy Nalen with the Denver Broncos. Incredible center. One of the best teammates I ever had. Around the same size as this guy. I'm going to go ahead and take Alec Lindstrom from Boston College, get another offensive lineman in there. I think when it's all said and done, he might end up being the top interior offensive lineman of the class. Boston College turns out the offensive lineman. Another guy probably could have been drafted this year, but coming back as one of the top centers in the country for the 2022 class. We'll go ahead and get him. And he's athletic. So that's the thing. Tommy Nalen, like this was the Denver Broncos offensive line, was kind of smaller, and they just had Alex Gibbs' zone blocking scheme down to a T, but they were nasty. That's what I'm going with Lindstrom here.
So I think that the number one center and potentially number one interior offensive lineman in the country is not Lindstrom, but it's my next pick, Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa.
Baller.
Yeah. I think that now that we're starting, I'm not really feeling bad for Linderbaum having to go up against Brzee and Haskell Garrett. That's a pro. Okay. You got to be ready to get in there and face players of that caliber. every single Sunday. So with him taken, now I'm going to be going for it's a little early for a running back. Okay. I'm going to be going with from NC State.
Damn it.
Ikem Ekwonu. I did look up some pronunciations, just not the Washington ones. I'm really sorry.
You'll make the sacrifice for a local boy, but if you have to go all the way out west to Washington,
I'm not gonna have to go to Seattle in a while. I got to see these guys from NC State like regular out and around town on lunch. No, I mean the thing that's so exciting about Ekwonu is the first place that I started hearing a lot of buzz about him was from other coaches, which is always a great sign because then it's like, that is the person that we are very concerned about. He has, been yet another one of these NC State, defensive linemen, offensive linemen who've really developed in a strong way. And I think he's going to have a huge season. I think he's one of the best offensive linemen in the country. So now I've got my offensive line and my defensive line shored up with Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa and Ikem Ekwonu from NC State.
So I'm aboard.
Back to you, Danny.
Okay, you got your two?
Yeah.
Okay, your time typed them in. I was following the typing along the way. All right, I'm going to go. So I've got my two offensive linemen. I've got a defensive lineman. I think there's a lot of good players left available. I'm going to take another big interior presence. I'm going to take LeBryan Ray, defensive tackle at Alabama. I think he's going to have a monster season this year, slowed a little bit from injuries last season. This dude's one of the most intimidating defensive linemen in the country. I like the pairing of my two up front.
DL. The interesting piece about Alabama's defensive line is that it's been really, really strong players, but we haven't been talking about them quite like some of the defensive lines of 2015, 2016. But those are some dudes. So I don't hate that. But LeBryan Ray doesn't have like the full, like you mentioned, the injuries. On paper, the stats don't really show him to be someone you want to gravitate towards, but to overlook him would be a big mistake.
All right. So little game theory here. Both Danny and Chip have two offensive linemen, but you've only got one. So I got to take an offensive lineman here just in case to be safe. I am taking from Notre Dame, Jarrett Patterson.
Strong interior.
He's on the board.
Yeah.
Just, I feel like, I think Kinnard and Patterson together, they're going to take up a lot of space, and they're pretty violent and physical, especially with their hands in like little short kind of areas. So I think they're going to make for a good matchup for Leal and whoever else I pair them with.
I can't hate on that, man. All right. So I have Evan Neal, offensive line, Coburn, DL, and Bijan Robinson at running back. So I'm pretty wide open about who I can take here. All right, except I can't take another running back, obviously. I'm going to go ahead and he's kind of a sleeper. Do I want to take him? I'm going to go ahead and take an offensive lineman. I'm going to go Thayer Munford, Ohio State. I think he's a really good player. Pairs nicely with Evan Neal. I'll tell you guys who my sleeper was here if I didn't do that for later, but I just think he's pretty legit.
I'm close. First of all, everybody's closed out of offensive line. We've completed the fourth round. Everyone has offensive linemen, and my big board is closed out. So while we don't seem to have number ones across the board, that is everybody that was on my wish list for offensive line. Is there anyone else? I mean, we're going to do best names that didn't make the cut a little bit later, but little sneak preview, or were there any OL sleepers?
I would say Danny took Alec Lindstrom from Boston College, and we were very close to surprisingly having two Boston College players taken off the offensive line in this draft, because on my big board is Zion Johnson.
Yeah, I had him on there too.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Did you guys have MJ Ale of Washington?
No. I did have Cade Mays, though.
Cape May's that'd be a good one.
They may have
MJ
Luke-
is 365, and like if you look at his PFF grade, his run grade is like best in the country. His pass pro grade, unsurprisingly, is like in the red. It's like a huge split. That's the guy I want going straight ahead.
His best pass rushing attribute is that he's large and you have to move around him.
Exactly.
Did they have Luke Matthews? Go from the family of NFL Hall of Fame talent. It'd be a pretty solid. And then you'd have another Aggie on there too.
All right, Bud, you got us. We're closed out on offensive linemen. You've got the first pick here in the 5th round. For listeners, Bud has Evan Neal, offensive lineman from Alabama, Thayer Munford, offensive lineman from Ohio State, Keondre Coburn, defensive lineman from Texas, and Bijan Robinson, running back from Texas. You need 1 defensive lineman and 1 linebacker to close your team.
All right. So I'm going to go to Utah here. And I may have cheated because I did the Around the Clock episode with Steve Bartle of Youth Zone. So I kind of got the lowdown on who on this Utah defense is going to be, the next stud. But Viane Moala is a really good run-stopping defensive tackle there, and somebody who I'd like to have on my team. 320-pounder. I've got some beef up front, guys. This is going to be a little tough to move, and I've got a linebacker sleeper who can chase him down later on in the draft and get him on the ground. So give me Viane Moala, please.
Viane Moala. All right. That takes us to Tom.
By the way, my pronunciation on that may be absolutely horrible. It might be Viane Moala, but I'm giving my best shot, and I'm sick.
Oh, okay. All right. You know what? This might be a little sleeperish, but the way the board's broken down, I'm done with offensive linemen. There's quite a few defensive linemen I like, so I'm willing to pass for now. For my running back, I am going to take another Utah pick. He's 5'11", but he's 220 pounds, which is a nice little bowling ball kind of style situation for this drill. So he's small enough to kind of fit into a crease in that kind of narrow gap, but he's big enough to deliver a pop when he gets there. From BYU, I'm taking Tyler Allgeier.
Sleeper. Sleeper.
I think he's a very good, he doesn't have kind of breakaway speed. Like if you're playing an actual game, he's probably not near the top of your list, but for a short little 5-yard burst of action and power and contact, I think he's going to be a lot of fun in this drill.
That's not a bad pick at all.
All right. I have still to go. I need linebacker. I need running back. I'm torn here. I'm in a tough spot. I kind of want to go Utah, give Utah some more love. But because when I think of Utah, I think of front sevens. I think of defensive front sevens specifically. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be a sucker for the athlete play, for the upside potential. I'm going to take Ventrell Miller at Florida. Inside linebacker, clog up the middle for me. He's been getting better and better. He could be one of the top inside backers. Only a 3-star recruit coming out, though. Makes me a little bit nervous, but he's averaged 5.2 tackles per game, 15 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. I'm going to take him fast and physical.
He's played
well.
Good.
Yeah, he gets good grades. People seem really excited about that. I don't think that you should let the 3-star high school rating cause any kind of concern. All right, so I've got 2 running backs that I am eyeing right here, and one of them I think is a little bit more of a sneaky play, but the other one just sounds so freaking cool, I've got a grown man who I think can bring grown man strength, but when he introduces himself, he sounds like any name off of the DMV roster. But when Tank Bigsby comes up and decides that he wants to lay the wood in this drill, I just hope he yells Tank every single time he makes contact with the opposing defenders. So for my running back, I'm going to go with Tank Bigsby from Auburn.
He's on my list of running backs. He was on my list of 4.
Yeah. Wait, okay. So now have you picked a back yet?
Me? I have, yes.
So who is,
I need a back.
Bijan was on there, right?
No, Bijan's gone.
No, but he was on Tom's original list.
Oh,
Tank was on there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Allgeier
who was your
on
fourth?
there. My fourth is.
Or do you not want to say until Danny goes?
Oh, I don't care. Mine's go.
I need a running back. I have to go running back.
Yeah, mine's Breece Hall.
Okay, well,
Not on my list. Come at me, Iowa State.
see, Iowa State fans.
All right.
Everybody on this show, like, we're going through like a rotation of Iowa State haters. Like, first it was Bud, then it was me, and now we are passing the torch on to you, Chip.
I nominated Iowa State last night for a good sleeper pick who could spoil like a spoiler for like somebody else's playoff hopes late in the season for Josh Pate's little poll he did. So I don't know if they took that the right way, but anyway.
They'll probably be pissed you called them sleepers.
Well, and see what's going to dig it even deeper here for the Iowa State fans. And this is where I'm going to admit I'm being a little performative because one of the best defensive players in the entire Big 12 happens to be a linebacker for Iowa State. And so not only might I ignore the best running back in the Big 12 who plays for Iowa State, but I might also ignore the best linebacker in the Big 12 who happens to play for Iowa State because I'm way too excited about young Noah Sewell, the boy who is 250 pounds and ready to come in and just be dominant from the linebacker position from Oregon. He's young, and I felt like I was really – actually, I've got Brian Brzee on there, so I've got some youth. But I will close out my Oklahoma drill with the linebacker position going to Noah Sewell. So the defense is Brian Brzee and Haskell Garrett up front, Noah Sewell at the linebacker position. The offense, Tyler Linderbaum and Ika Mekwanu from NC State up front with Tank Bigsby at the running back position.
It's good.
All right.
Squad.
Solid. I think you guys are missing the boat here, though.
On the idea, like you just think we're
Wait, like he took the wrong Oregon linebacker?
No. No,
Okay.
there's one out. I need a running back. So I'm looking at all your running backs picks. You know, Bijan Robinson, he's cute, he's fast, he's sexy. But I remember when I used to run these kind of inside drills that were about contact, were about power. Like I could either go to Warwick Dunn on this one and see if he could make somebody miss like in a phone booth, which was fun. But when I handed it to William Floyd, he was going to run somebody over. Like we ran 34 wham. He was going to bring it. In this drill, in the Oklahoma drill, like you could be either on the receiving end or the delivering end. And even when it's in the offensive side of the ball, I still want to be delivering the blows. So I wanted to go with the fullback. And I want somebody with the chemistry, that just the toughness, the physicality with that. You heard, I mean, all along I've tried to build 5-star culture. I don't care about 5-star players. I want 5-star culture. I'm going with Wisconsin's John Chenal. Came in as a preferred walk-on to Wisconsin, made himself a role, 6'2", 250 pounds. We don't need to pop off 50-yard explosive plays in this drill. We just need to run you over to get some excitement going. We're going to hear the thump of the pads, and that's what he's going to give for me. So we could miss a block, and it doesn't even matter because he's going to run over your linebacker.
I gave strong consideration to just going with 4 fullbacks on my board.
Which would have been solid. I would have loved it too.
Yeah.
Can't hate on that at all. That's pretty smart.
All right, so I got to finish with the defensive lineman, and I'm stuck between 2. But I think I gotta play the local route here. He does not play near me, but he grew up near me. In fact, he grew up in Maywood, Illinois, which is literally right down the street from where I grew up. Plays for Oklahoma now. He's a transfer. Perrion Winfrey. Just put him next to Leal. Got 2 giant men in the middle. Christian Harris behind him, able to roam and take whatever gap they open, and he can find and get in and make the hit at the line of scrimmage for the loss. I don't know who's going to be winning very often in my drill, but I think it's going to be really fun to watch.
Right.
All right, now
Oklahoma.
Man.
Yeah, that's what that was one of my.
It's an Oklahoma drill.
That's fair.
Fair point.
All right,
so
bud.
I do want to apologize. His name is Viane Moala. Thank you, producer Coca, for pointing that out to me. All right, so the guy I was going to go with is probably the smarter pick here. I was going to pick Devin Lloyd at linebacker, the Utah linebacker. I mean, 2-time first team All Pac-12, 235, makes a boatload of tackles. Obviously, Utah, like they're not going to have a soft middle linebacker starting for them. But I don't know if you guys saw the transfer portal news, and I don't think it's official that this is the reason why this kid jumped in the transfer portal. But 2-year starter for Oregon, right? Slade Matuita. He just jumped in the transfer portal, and there's a lot of Oregon fans out there who think it's because he was about to lose his spot, even though he was a 2-year starter, because Oregon signed this dude who is a dude, and I'm this high on him, so I'm gonna go with him over Devin Lloyd. Justin Flowe was literally suplexing people. Mm-hmm. If you've seen him,
his high school tape was ridiculous.
He looks like The Rock, right? Like he was a 5-star, not just because of how he looked, but because like he was just freakishly good. Go watch his highlights. He's like the only real highlight tape that I can remember high school wise being close to this is Reuben Foster. Right. And except he's a little bit bigger than Reuben was. So
he's about 250. He's like 6'2", 250. Yeah.
Yeah. Like go find a picture of Justin Flowe. I'm a little bit shocked that I'm getting Justin Flowe with the 24th overall pick in the Oklahoma drill draft. And I didn't have him on my board once I decided not to take linebacker. And I was like, wait a second. Chip is going to take the other Oregon kid, which is a great pick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just,
He was my linebacker sleeper that I was.
Okay, so if both of you had Flowe and Sewell, would you have gone Flowe over Sewell?
Yes.
Definitively?
The physicality, yeah. Just like it's a freakish level of physicality.
Tom,
I think Sewell's a better football player.
I like Sewell just fine, but I only had 4 linebackers on my board, and he wasn't one of them. It was Harris.
All right, so we will run down everyone's Oklahoma drill draft and share some of the best names that did not make the cut from our big boards, grade each team, and more next. Hey, Cover 3 listeners, I wanted to let you know about what's on CBS Sports HQ this week. As always, CBS Sports HQ is the network to start your sports news day at 8 a.m. Eastern with Morning Buzz. It's an hour of highlights, news, and all the day's need to know. Then come back. I mean, you could leave us on all day, but at 6 p.m., we're going to have all the night's action. We set the table for you for that sports evening. We got dozens of picks from the best analysts and cappers from the sports world. So how do you watch CBS Sports HQ? It's easy. Go to your Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, pretty much any connected TV, and look for that CBS Sports app. Fire it up. Check out CBS Sports HQ, the only 24/7 free streaming sports network. Okay, let's go squad by squad here before we do our best that didn't make the cut. Bud, Evan Neal, offensive lineman, Alabama is his first pick. Keondre Coburn in the second round, defensive lineman from Texas, keeping it with Texas. Bijan Robinson is his running back. Then Ohio State, Thayer Munford, offensive lineman in the 4th round. Viane Moala, shout out to you, defensive lineman from Utah, and then Justin Flowe. I see, obviously, the double Texas stands out, but you're bringing it home with some strong Pac-12 representation. Bud, I'll give you first word. What do we like about this squad?
You know, I don't know if this is the best football squad. Like if we like, hey, are you starting a football team? Or are these the exact guys you want? But I think the squad matches up really well with the Oklahoma drill draft. Like, Justin Flowe is the most physical linebacker I've seen in probably, when was Reuben Foster coming out? 2011?
2011, so 2012.
A decade. You know, I mean, you got Evan Neal, who's just a total freak. I think it's mostly just the physicality and the size. Like we're not trying to make you miss. We're just trying to put you in the dirt.
I think you made a mistake.
With Bijan?
I think, you could have had Christian Harris. Because Tom picked, I'm looking at the snake, right? You could have had Christian Harris. Is that right? Or did Christian Harris get taken off?
No, he could have, but I think getting Justin Flowe at the end kind of, because like the top 2 linebackers on my board were legitimately Harris and then Flowe.
I think he could have got Bijan later. But if you wanted Flowe all along, then you played your hand perfectly.
I was going to take Bijan. The reason
you
I
were
took Christian Harris was because he took Bijan.
Interesting.
You don't think Bijan's too small for this?
That's what I'm worried about. We're all like, I think we're all falling in love with Bijan Robinson, somebody who hasn't carried the ball
pounds.
that
How
much.
big do you want him to be?
When I saw him in high school, I was like, that kid's not small.
Yeah, he's not a tiny dude.
What does Texas list him at?
Let's check.
Have we
216.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
Hey, John.
It's because he's too fast.
250 coming at you.
All right, that's fair.
All right, Tom. He's got DeMarvin Leal as his first pick, defensive lineman from Texas A&M. Darion Canard, offensive lineman from Kentucky. In the third round, Christian Harris, linebacker from Kentucky. Jarrett Patterson in the fourth, offensive lineman from Notre Dame. Tyler Allgeier, running back from BYU, and then Perrion Winfrey, defensive lineman from Oklahoma. My question is first about Winfrey, because the fact that Oklahoma has a couple like Nick Benito is a really good edge rusher, but I don't know if he is the best Oklahoma drill player. Jalen Redmond opted out last season. He's going to be back in the mix. I didn't end up going with either of those two, but those are two Oklahoma players that I certainly had from that defensive side of the ball stand out to me. Sell me on Winfrey.
I like Winfrey in that it was between him and it was Myron Tagovailoa Amos at Notre Dame. I ended up going with Winfrey simply because 300 pounds, he's bigger, he's agile, and also like the common theme through the 6 players that I picked is violence. Like these are guys, which is what you want. These are guys who get physical, who will push you around, who will knock you around. And in an Oklahoma drill, that's what I want. And watching Perrion Winfrey, he's not like he's an interior defensive lineman. He's in there to make poop happen. He's in there to hit somebody. He's in there to get into gaps and try to penetrate. And I think that fits well going up, especially against my offensive line of Darion Canard and Jarrett Patterson, him next to Leal. I think that's a lot of fun for me to watch.
I like Tom's the ability of his team to penetrate too. Like I think mine's just going to stifle you with line scrimmage, and then you're gonna have to move around, and then Justin Flowe, full speed ahead downhill, just runs your ass over. But like Tom has the ability with his defensive lineman to end the play before the backer even gets there.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. Thought that especially with also for it seems like there's a lot of like experience on that group. A lot of, we mentioned that, Christian Harris, Kinnard, Jarrett Patterson, a lot of DeMarvin Leal is on the young side of it. So
these are mature young men,
and these are old man strength.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Danny has Kenyon Green getting things started, offensive lineman from Texas A&M, follows it up with the pride of Charlotte, North Carolina, Jordan Davis from Georgia. Alec Lindstrom, offensive lineman out of Boston College, is his third round pick. Follows that up with LeBryan Ray, defensive lineman out of Alabama. Ventrell Miller, linebacker out of Florida in the 5th round. And then bringing the pain, the fullback, John Chenal from Wisconsin. So we've got 4 SEC, 1 ACC, 1 Big Ten. Felt like you went to the SEC for all of the stereotypical things that you want from the SEC.
Yep.
How do you feel about your squad?
I feel solid. I feel really good about my squad. The only thing I was considering doing differently was taking a different running back. Other than that, I feel like I got a top 2 guy at each position that I had coming in. So I feel really good about it. The only thing I'm surprised about, and this could go to the players left on the floor here, most lists that you look at as far as best running backs available, Isaiah Spiller, somebody who's been physical, he's been one of the top running backs in the most physical conference out there, was not taken off the board. But I think we all kind of went different directions for good reasons of what we were looking for. But I think he's an incredibly talented back to be sitting there like, hey, are you guys going to put me in or what? And I got to go with the big fullback in my spot.
Yeah, there's a Texas A&M fan who, even though 2 Texas A&M players were drafted in the first 3 picks of this, which, that's a pretty good sign for the Aggies. Probably still furious and screaming at their podcast listening device right now, whether it's in the car, iPhone, or whatever. All right, my squad went Brian Brzee in the 1st round, Haskell Garrett in the 2nd for my defensive line, then Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa, then Ikem Ekwonu out of NC State for the offensive line. In the 5th round, getting Tank Bigsby out of Auburn. And in the 6th round, Noah Sewell, linebacker from Oregon. Any criticisms? Any questions?
No, I think you did a
terrible
good job.
team, obviously.
I mentioned earlier, I was worried about your being a little too defensive line heavy, but I do think by getting Linderbaum and Kwanu that you did a good job of kind of balancing that out a little bit. So I think that that's going to be an interesting battle. And then Tank Bigsby, I think, is a good choice for this. And Sewell, like I said, wasn't on my board of 4 linebackers, but I think he makes plenty of sense. And it's funny to me too, because we took both Justin Flowe and Noah Sewell, and just kind of give you like an idea for people who are listening to this, because I can already see tweets about us not picking Kayvon Thibodeau. And it's like, Kayvon Thibodeau is the best player on that defense. Like I said, he should be the number 1 pick in the draft next year. It's just in a draft like this, where we're picking guys for an Oklahoma drill, by putting Thibodeau in that kind of box, you're taking away a lot of what makes him great. Because he's a good defender against the run, and I think he's somewhat underrated against it, but he's just so much more than that I don't think he's a great fit for this draft.
This is so particular. I can't wait for people to yell at us about the potential number 1 pick in the next NFL draft.
I considered him. I had him out there. I was like, did you just throw him in there and say, go get him? Like,
I put him at 17. I had him at 17 on my big board, with the premise being, if we get all the way down here and he's still available, then I should, like, if for some, whatever, that's 17 all positions, not 17 among defensive linemen. Among defensive linemen, I think he was down at like 5 or 6, with the premise being, if Brzee, Garrett, Jordan Davis, DeMarvin Leal are all gone, it's like, well, you know what? We're just going to go for speed on the outside. But the players left over, I really liked the idea of Kentucky running back Chris Rodriguez in the Oklahoma drill. Yeah, I think that he is a physical runner. He is so good in the like short and red zone situations, and being able to just like drag tacklers across the line to gain or into the end zone. So I thought that Chris Rodriguez from Kentucky stood out. I mean, running back is where we're going to have a lot of, I think, some names. When I was pitching my Tank Bigsby earlier, I was considering him against Brian Robinson from Alabama. Brian Robinson, I kind of think that that's another, like, he runs really violently and he's really big. And I think that he would be very good. And I think he can be really good this season. But Bigsby, just, I think, a little bit more of a higher end in terms of the performance that we've seen so far. So there were a lot of, Breece Hall, you mentioned, Isaiah Spiller. There are good running backs, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be what you want to do here in this draft.
So producer Coca had a good question in the chat. He said, why Breece Hall over Miles Murphy?
Brian Brzee over Miles Murphy.
Excuse me. Brian Brzee over Miles Murphy. Excuse me.
All about
Coca had it right. I did not.
Yeah, all about interior disruption, because I think of Miles Murphy as a little bit more of a defensive end, and Brian Brzee is he's a true defensive tackle. And those were both of my picks, because Haskell Garrett is also interior defensive tackle type. And that was what I wanted. I mean, that was my 1 and 2 all positions big board were Brzee and Garrett. So I was very happy to get them at that point in the draft.
Was Thibodeau the only, let's call it like 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 tech who you guys had on your board? Like guys who are not like, not 3 tech, not 5 tech, like, 34 DNs or D tackles. Like, was he the only guy who's an actual like 4-3 DN style player you guys had?
There was another player I had who maybe was one of the guys Chip didn't want to include on this board because he couldn't say his name. He's kind of like an edge guy for Washington. He's kind of a hybrid lineman edge guy. Zion Tupuola Fatui, who's actually hurt right now, and I don't even know how his availability will be for the start of the regular season. But he was somebody that I considered, but at the end he didn't make my board just because I couldn't really decide. Like there were other guys, beefier guys, more interior guys that I was higher on.
What about you, Bud?
No, yeah, I didn't even have the Washington guy on there. It was just Thibodeau. But like that, I think that speaks to the drill. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, you are primarily in a phone booth. It's not that quickness doesn't matter, but like you need to be quick in short area. Like, and I think Thibodeau has shown that there was some good film. I think Jeff Schwartz had it the other day on Twitter, showing that he basically pancaked a guy from Utah who had him head up, which is obviously nice in the run game. Did you guys have Aaron Hansford at linebacker, or Justin Schaefer or Ed Ingram at offensive line?
I had Mike Rose from Iowa State.
Yeah, that was the fourth name on my board.
Mm-hmm.
I had
Ed Ingram,
Peyton Wilson from NC State, and then Grant Morgan from Arkansas.
Another Washington player I considered, but ultimately didn't take the top 4 was Edifon Ulafoshio. I'm not 100% sure.
Thomas just flexing now with these names.
Yeah,
I am probably butchering the hell out of them, to be honest with you.
I again, Washington fans, I'll get a few of these pronunciations down by the time by July. That's what I'll do. I'll spend this week working on pronunciations.
To be fair, we didn't have a lot of Washington games to watch to learn last year.
Yes, and a bunch of them opted out.
Yeah,
and the ones we did have, there wasn't a lot of snaps because Washington ran the ball like 70 times. So they were over in 2 hours.
It was great.
We hired John Donovan as an OC.
Yeah, if you were caught like watching some like 41-38 game over on one channel, you could miss an entire Washington football game in the second and third quarter.
Washington out here trying to let everybody get to bed at a reasonable hour.
I respect that. So like to your point earlier, Bud, if I was to break it out, somebody like an Aiden Hutchinson would be somebody who I was saying, if I was just saying top defensive ends. I mean, he didn't have Michigan's defensive line didn't have a great season last year, but super talented. Like, is Will Anderson a linebacker or is he a defensive end? I mentioned Nick Bonito earlier during the show, but I kind of feel like I ruled most of those guys out from even being on the big board.
Yeah, Bonito's not a guy I want playing head up. Like, I mean, he was he at Givens, Danny? I think so.
He might have been, yeah.
Like super quick dude who needed to put on weight to get to like 240, 245. You know, he was like it's Oklahoma drill draft. Like, you want the big dude, you want the linebacker, you kind of want the guys like, can he cover?
Right.
I don't
You
care.
want the guy
like,
that's not really built for today's college football.
Yeah,
right?
yes,
I mean,
yes.
And that's the thing that's kind of crazy in all of this is, and it's a drill they don't run anymore because banging heads too much. But even us discussing where to put guys, I think it demonstrates the position-less nature of the way that that football is moving. Like, you're not, and clearly they're going to have positions assigned to them, but they're looking drastically different than they always have historically. That's the evolution of the game.
By the way, Bonito went to Aquinas, but he went to U school first.
Gotcha.
The versatile can drop back in coverage does not matter at all. Yeah. It's like we're so excited. I mean,
is he a safety or a linebacker? Don't care. He's not going to be here.
Near on my big board, just for the LOLs, if Tank Bigsby and Brian Robinson and Chris Rodriguez were all gone, I was going to bring out Frank Gore Jr.
Nice.
Just, I figured, like, you know how Frank Gore Jr. just gets clicks? Like, every single time Frank Gore Jr. does anything, then you can count on somebody at the websites that we work for, right? And they're like, watch, Frank Gore Jr. impresses his dad with touchdown.
And there's a chance that Frank Gore Sr. could suit up in his uniform because he still looks like he could play in college.
Yes.
So Frank Gore Sr. is still playing, right? In the NFL?
Yeah. I don't know if he's on a roster right now, but I would bet he is by the time the season starts.
So
you should do the Roger Clemens thing where, like, you just like, guess what? I'm not going to play any road games and I'm going to sit out until like the final third of the season, and you could pay me a prorated amount. And I'll just, like, if you're in the playoff race, I'm dependable. Pay me for the final 4 games. It'll be fresh.
Do the Fournette plan, like what Tampa Bay did with Leonard Fournette last year, where I think he had like, maybe 7 carries per game until the playoffs. And then it's 25 carries. Just don't sign Frank Gore until like the day before your playoff roster has to be finalized. And then bam, Frank Gore is your playoff running back.
Killer. And then that keeps Frank Gore healthy enough so that we get both of them in the league at the same time.
Yes.
It worked for Buster Posey, by the way. Like, to flip to baseball real fast, he took last year off, with the COVID thing, but like, he came back and he's all of a sudden he's fresh.
He's
again.
hitting
Like,
bombs.
Dude, he's crushing it.
That's awesome. The time away was going to lead him to either just decide to hang up the cleats or just come back ready for a renaissance. That's a Noel, right?
Yep.
Yeah. That might be one of the best ever to lace him up there at Dick Hauser Stadium.
Any strong College World Series takes?
Oh yeah, are you guys ready to watch the World Series play for the co-national championship? Let's go.
You're going to give the Wolfpack?
100%. I'm giving the Wolfpack a championship. You better believe I am. This fiasco that we call a College World Series championship with a major asterisk over it.
I did talk to a coach last night, by the way, who coaches college football, and he was like, honestly, like it sucks for NC State. But this is a great example for us that this stuff's not over. And now we can really encourage our team to, get the shot and not have to sit out games this year.
Here's where I would disagree with him. Guess who doesn't run college football? The
Coaches.
NCAA.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry too much about it with them. And of course, hopefully I'll do what's right for their teams. But that's where I think this ball was completely dropped. There was the fact that they had numerous players, and I get the vaccine policy and I get they want to do that, but they had players test 6 days straight for NC State, and the NCAA still said, nah, we're not going to let you go on, because basically the NCAA wanted to ensure that they had a World Series, best of 3. And they started getting nervous because of the rising tests, even though there were enough players that had tested negative to field a team. They were saying, no, we want to make sure we get a championship. So I think they protected their own behind at the expense of NC State, because I think NC State could have played.
And that's how they wrote the policy, right? Like
right.
everybody knew the rules going in, and you're playing with fire if you didn't go get the shot. Like you had a chance to have a really good team that got bounced. Like that's why Vanderbilt got it.
There's also a very easy way for NC State to go ahead.
The thing that's effed up is that once they entered the protocol, because they had a player get sick, which is the worst case scenario. Then he tested positive. Then they went into contact tracing, and then they started testing more. And then they decided to test the entire team, including the vaccinated players. And then they had 4 vaccinated players test positive, which put them over the number where the NCAA said no. Like they got into the testing protocols too deep, and you do not want to do that. It's similar to the NFL drug policy. Like if you're in the program, you're screwed. Like you're going to get tested every day. It's a nightmare, where if you want to smoke whatever you want, you just have to be smart about it, and you can do whatever you want. It's not that dissimilar here.
What NC State should have done that could have gotten them around all of this was just have the players buy tickets to the game, because then it doesn't matter what you do.
Exactly. That's the thing that's just hilarious in all of this. They could have gone to the game, sat in the stands all together with arms around each other,
climb over the side, climb over the side,
out of boots.
Yeah. And then be like, well, we're going to pull these fans out of the stands and let them play for us today.
Wild stuff.
But I do think it's going to be a fun series, though. Even that being said, Mississippi State and Vanderbilt should be a fun one. I got Mississippi State, though. You guys got a pick?
I'm going with the Vandy boys, because we're a Vandy pod.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I forgot.
That's shout out to Barton. So nobody is there any, because you understand that with how confusing it was very easy for NC State fans to go all like conspiracy on it, right?
Well, they still are. It's not like they
Did you read the Kendall Rogers story?
I've not gotten a chance.
I thought that was actually really good. Like that's a guy
timeline.
Yeah, like there was so much stuff on the timeline, like on my Twitter timeline, that reading Kendall's piece, like, okay, this really sucks for NC State. But
the only thing that I think you could, and Kendall Rogers was very clear about this. He said in all his reporting, nothing said that Tim Corbin forced the testing, that pressured the NCAA into testing more. Like that was a lot of the message board material that was out there, which is why NC State fans are still livid at Tim Corbin. Was the NC State they petitioned to play a doubleheader on Saturday. The NCAA denied it. They may or may not. I don't know if they asked Vanderbilt, but if you're Vanderbilt, why would you bend over backwards to help your opponent? Why I would say no. Like if we win, we want to make sure our bullpen's all right. We want to stay on schedule. Why would
what time? Yeah. What time is the game? That's what time the game should be.
Right. Exactly. So, but yeah, that's not going to stop. And then there's, of course, somehow, and I think it's a legit picture. They have Dr. Fauci in a Vanderbilt uniform. So then that lets the rumors run. That's deep state
Seems
stuff.
Legit.
Yes. Yeah, totally legit. Because there's a picture of Fauci in a Vanderbilt baseball jersey.
We've got politicians that are like demanding, like trying to like file file these official statements demanding that Mark Emmert be fired over this. Like the way
right
that they're
after his extension.
Yeah, it's like the way they're rallying the base right now is they're leading the charge to fire the NCAA president.
Every
only thing I think the
2022
NCAA
race is dunking on Mark Emmert. That's all it is.
The only thing in all this I think the NCAA could have done, and I've said this all football season with the fall, is wait. Like they could have just said, you know what, we're going to flip. We're going to wait a day. We're going to push everything back. Let's get this straightened out so we can have the best championship possible. Instead, they delayed the game by an hour. It was funny because this morning we had Chris Burke on my radio show who called the game. He said 3 hours before the game, he's sitting in the NC State dugout because he's broadcasting the game and he's getting all this baseball info from Elliott Avent, the head coach at NC State. And he said the dugout was packed, guys coming and going, like taking BP. He said everything was 100% normal. And then he goes up to the booth to get ready to like put on your headset and call the game. And they were like, there's an issue. Like NC State had no idea. And if it's that much of a race to get tests and figure it out, and you delay it 1 hour, like I would have said, delay it 24 hours, figure it out, let the other game take place that night, push things back. But I'm sure there's pressure from the broadcast company. Like they don't want to push things back a day. They had to do that with women's. They don't want to do that. I would have said, buy yourself more time. Give everyone information because that was a big, putting out the release at 2 a.m. was problematic. They could have bought more time and then figured out the testing, maybe consulted with more medical personnel and made a better decision other than sending NC State home.
I will say that it sucks for NC State, and I feel terrible for the players in that team. But at the same time, anything that makes Will Brinson as angry as this did is okay in my book.
Also, do you think that people feel bad like in the conference for Elliott Avent? Because
I do. I think
really?
I think
in the ACC among the other coaches?
Yeah, I do. I like Elliott. So I've covered him. I like him. But see, again, like he was quoted and it sounded like this MAGA pound your chest, like I'm not going to indoctrinate my players. He got the vaccine. Like, so he can't be that anti-vax. He was just
I didn't mean like from an anti-vax standpoint. I just meant from like
you meant from like a
previous interactions coaching against him type standpoint.
Yes.
This is way too inside, literally inside baseball, inside the ACC.
College baseball.
I was gonna like bring it home, but the point that you just made, like this is a great reminder that when the college football season starts and we are counting down to the game, we should not feel as though we are all the way back to 2019 with this. And some of those same concerns about waking up on Saturday morning and finding out that things are not going to be going as planned is absolutely still the case. Especially if these teams don't get vaccinated, it'll be interesting to see how conferences write their protocol.
Right. I think it'll be vastly different. I don't think the testing protocols will be anywhere near what they were last year. I think it'll be very minimal impact. But the problem is if the impact is your quarterback or somebody else, then
it does not feel minimal.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I wouldn't give to have a whole season full of packed houses and not having to worry about last minute test results.
Yeah.
Right.
Fingers crossed.
Yep.
We'll see. You can follow him on Twitter at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Tom Fernell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.